can produce very good work, but rather disorganized about handing it in, quiet in class. That's like, I've noticed one aspect of your ADHD, and I've noticed one aspect of your autism. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. A really big welcome to those of you who are new here, who found my channel from my last video about autism and ADHD and having both. Before I get started, I just really want to share some very exciting personal news that my workbook about autistic traits is finished and I've submitted it to Amazon for review. It's really meant for people who are just starting out on their journey, learning about autism, recognizing it in themselves, kind of understanding how this fits in with their whole life, but you don't really know what to do about that. You may think, yeah, this really sounds like me, but what next? And you might talk to your therapist who's a bit like,
well, I don't know what to do with that either.
And I know that there's a lot of confusion in those early months or even early years when you're kind of just figuring things out and figuring out, what does this mean? Is this an autistic trait? I didn't know that was an autism thing. I've been there. I've been there the last, God, how many years has it been since my diagnosis? 4, maybe. I think 4. But I understand the confusion, and that's why I created this resource to help you in your journey. It is a true labor of love, and I'm really excited for the release. So please keep an eye out for the next couple of videos where I'll be talking a bit more about the workbook and obviously giving you information how to buy it. Oh, so excited. But enough waffle. Today I'm going to talk about my old school reports, because actually that's kind of a part of diagnosis process as well, is looking back at your childhood, seeing what comments teachers made or what comments people who knew back then made. When I was in the UK over the summer, I picked up all my old school reports, or most of them I think, and brought them back and read through them and was like, there's some very interesting stuff, interesting comments that maybe are probably quite obvious comments that you would expect, but maybe not. So I'm just going to go through them. I've got a few from primary school and most of the rest are from secondary school, and see what my teachers said about me back in the 90s and 2000s, which was, admittedly, a very different time. Oh my God, that was like 20 years ago. 20 years ago. So obviously, as an undiagnosed autistic ADHD, potentially gifted kid, there is an interesting kind of intersection of the three of them. I remember reading a tweet somewhere where it said, were you the neurodivergent kid who is always a pleasure to teach, or are you the neurodivergent kid who had so much potential? So before we start, I just want to give you some background, which I think is somewhat relevant. Both of the schools that I went to, primary and secondary, were all girls, private schools with a heavy emphasis on academic performance, academic success, extracurricular success, basically being the best, be best. And my secondary school in particular was definitely a place for the so-called, elites of society. I still remember being very amused when I listened to my headmistress. It was some social event that I was invited to, my headmistress schmoozing with somebody saying, don't you know, we've got a princess here. Princess was me. No, just kidding, I'm not princess. Or am I? But it was just quite funny because I very much did not fit into that world, not just for reasons related to autism. Elitism kind of played its part as well. Success was very much marked by high grades, high performance, and eventually a place at an elite worldwide university. It was that kind of a place. So I'm going to start with just a couple of reports from primary school. Let's go back to 1995. So age 10, Samantha is a very mature member of the group. I know a lot of autistic kids can sometimes give off the impression of being very mature for their age. She's very single-minded and sets herself high standards. So it's my fault, is it? Samantha is very quiet, but she is popular and is growing more confident in her friendships. English, strongly motivated, works carefully and thoughtfully, and her work is always beautifully presented. She's a quiet girl, but she's becoming more confident about joining in oral work. Yes. She works with great diligence and enthusiasm. That's maths. She's a diligent worker. Science. French. She's always produced excellent work. It's been a pleasure teaching her. Yeah, I bet. History. She works quietly and sensibly. Oh, it says, unfortunately, in the exam, she only answered 2 out of the 4 questions required, but the 2 questions she answered were of an excellent standard. She must try to speed up. Something about doing my real ability justice. Well, I answered 50% of the exam and I got 47%. That's pretty good, actually. Geography. In the lessons, she seldom participates, but her exercises are neat and correct. Religious education, she did fairly well in her examination, but I would have expected a higher mark from her. This is art. She has shown in her quiet way that she can produce neat creative work through diligence and forethought. So this next one, it was my form tutor who clearly liked me, and I just want to point out that like it is a really nice thing. I'm not saying that this isn't a nice thing to write about someone, but I want to read this whole thing see what she said about me. Samantha is a quietly positive and determined pupil who is unfailingly pleasant and courteous. She works very hard and achieves a high standard in all her activities. She deserves congratulations for both academic achievement and her commitment to gymnastics. When I read this, I actually cried. When I was going through it, I cried because I thought, what a lot to put on a 10-year-old, on an 11-year-old. Unfailingly pleasant and courteous. That is who I am, and anything that's below that is not accepted. No mistakes are accepted. What does it actually do? It just sets you up to crash and burn and fail. And there's nowhere to go from that. There's nowhere to go. There's no room for improvement. And that's not to say that you shouldn't compliment or praise people who are working hard and who are cooperative and whatever, members of society. I can't believe I'm complaining about that school report, but actually it just felt like so much to put on a young child. Some of the other comments that year: very conscientious, always gives her best, works conscientiously, she's a quiet, diligent girl, she's quietly confident. How many times have I said quiet now? Well organized. Samantha works quietly but is joining in class discussions far more. Needs to participate more in oral work. She seldom participates in discussion. She has a sensible, mature attitude towards her endeavours, and she is a pleasure to teach. She shows distinct musicality in all she undertakes. Her singing voice is strong and clear. Oh, this is actually really nice. I like getting complimented on my voice. She's an excellent gymnast. She's a dedicated member of the squad. High standards. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I mean, it goes on like this, to be honest. This is primary school. If you did well in your academics, you get good reports. So by the time I left primary school, conscientious. That seems to be in every single one. She should be pleased. Gained extra mark for effort this time. She's been a pleasure to teach. She's been a real pleasure to teach. She has outstanding natural ability and uses it well. Her contribution to the gymnastics squad has been faultless. She has a wonderful sense of humour, and I will miss her greatly. Oh, that's my gymnastics teacher. What does it say at the end? Her obvious academic abilities have been rewarded with excellent and well-deserved results. She's a studious and talented pupil, and we await news of promising grades at GCSE. So that was what my primary school teachers thought of me. Actually, that was a little bit of a self-esteem boost to read. Yes, I am quite excellent. It's a shame that none of this at the time made any difference to my horribly low self-esteem. And let's move on to my secondary school, which I started when I was just about turned 13 or something, and stayed in until I was 18. It's a big pile. It's a very big pile. Autumn 1998. English. She found the unit test difficult in the sense that she started off too slowly and hence failed to finish. The rest of the work has been very good, and I feel she has potential. Okay. French, she's made excellent progress this term. She should perhaps aim to assert herself more orally. Scripture. She's made a most encouraging start. I should like to see her participate a little more in class discussion. And then the form tutor says she's settled in well, although rather quiet. She's helpful, attentive, and cooperative. I struggled so much that first term of secondary school. I was so out of my depth. Puberty hit and it was just a mess. I was a mess. And I really didn't like it there. I was so anxious and they just want to know how well I'm doing. Biology, she's still rather quiet. History, she lacks confidence. Geography, she's worked quietly and steadily. Latin, quietly studious. Drama, she has grown in confidence. Right, so this one was one that actually did make me laugh. This is the end of the first year and she got off to a slow start in the English exam, apparently having lost her pen. We start to see little snippets of ADHD creeping in as time goes on. It's quite funny. I say funny, it's also sad. Lack of time became a problem and probably largely accounts for her slightly disappointing mark. I found it very stressful to do timed exams. It's a very kind of fake atmosphere. There are a few exams that you'll do in your adult life, but most of the time you're not writing, you're not producing these kind of things to timed pressure. Nobody says, can you write a paragraph about this in an hour, unless you're like a journalist. Your experience at school is very artificial. It doesn't necessarily relate to the real world. So you're learning all these skills to do well in exams, but what are you going to do with those skills afterwards? You're going to write essays. This one's a funny one. She remains quiet in lessons, and for a self-confessed non-enthusiast for this subject, history, she's done remarkably well. I can actually just see me as a 13-year-old having the teacher being like, do you like history, Sam? And me going, no. Like, no. Sorry, is that insulting? Nah. I'm about age 14 now. Steady progress, making progress, thoughtful and thorough, steady progress. Biology can produce very good work, but rather disorganized about handing it in, quiet in class. That's like, I've noticed one aspect of your ADHD, and I've noticed one aspect of your autism. Coping very well on paper, but one must contribute more to lessons. It's funny because that's French, and then in German, she contributes well in lessons. French and German, you know, two languages that I was both actually good at both of them. One of them I was clearly able to contribute more in lessons, and I suspect that's because the German class was much smaller. It was easier for me to kind of feel less intimidated in a large group. I probably liked my German teacher better. My French teacher, the one who kept on saying she needs to contribute more, is actually one of the only people who noticed how anxious I was the entire time. So she says after talking about how I'm doing, she's highly reluctant to participate in lessons, however, and can be a most anxious student. She was very nervous before her oral examination. She has not met all her deadlines this year, often due to absence, and this has concerned me. I do hope that this very pleasing result will give her confidence. Yes, I was completely anxious. I was terrified of oral exams in languages. I just think it's amazing that, you know, I get all these comments about, oh, she's so quiet and this and that, but this is the first one where she's actually like, she is anxious. She's really anxious. Music. Her project based on songs from the series Friends was imaginative and interesting. And they say that autistic special interests are obsessive. I was really enthusiastic about incorporating all of my interests into my work at that age. Right, summative report. God, this is for a 14-year-old summative report. She's an exemplary student who works steadily and diligently at all times. She unfailingly, that's the second time I've heard this word, unfailingly, presents a mature, composed, and positive outlook on life. She's played a quiet role in the house, showing considerable loyalty and integrity towards her friends. It's a pleasure to see her growing in confidence. It's funny to see what they see from the outside, isn't it? I don't know what's going on. I need to... So this is 15, when I was 15. Maths, her test results have not been as high as I expect of her. I actually don't remember what happened in my life this year. I think I was just sort of crumbling under the weight of depression and anxiety, but this is the year when I start to get comments like, careless mistakes, I know she can do better than this, her potential, blah, blah, blah. She lacks self-confidence and is reticent in answering questions in class. I'm sure she has a lot to offer in lessons. She must use the opportunities to make positive contributions. Her preparations, her preps, homeworks are very good, showing her understanding of the subject, but she must ensure she always hands them in on time. Yeah, I did lack self-confidence. Their solution is just like, she needs to be more confident in order to make up for her lack of self-confidence. And there wasn't ever any like, what can we do to help you become more confident? You know, there was none of that. I have so much potential, if only I just stopped with all the things that were difficult. She's making satisfactory progress, but should improve the punctuality of her work. Clearly, I was struggling with the workload at this point. I was doing 10 GCSEs and I ended up dropping history because I hated it. And so a lot of the comments at this point were showing how much I was struggling with the workload and organizing it and just getting everything done, because I was also doing quite a lot of extras at the time and nobody was really paying attention to the kind of holistic thing, because each of these ones, they saw me in one lesson and nobody really put it all together. The house mistress said, she's a quiet, conscientious worker, keeps a low profile in the house, but seems to be happy. Spoiler alert, I was not. Let's see what I've post-it noted this time. Her self-confidence has grown. This is biology. Enabling her to make valuable contributions to class discussions. So clearly I was trying really hard at working on what they were saying. Her preparations have been excellent and she has overcome the problem of handing them in late. If only we knew it was as easy as just trying harder. We can overcome all our problems. So actually, I say none of them got me, but I'm just reading this from an English teacher who said, her love of the subject is clear. And it's like, this is the first comment that I've had in 4 years where they talk about whether I like the subject or not. Like, am I passionate about it? It's the first comment where anyone actually cares. It's talking about I was doing Pride and Prejudice. I actually really did like Pride and Prejudice. I think that there is a lot of neurodivergently coded characters in it, and I would very much like to do a video. I have got a video planned. I don't know when it's going to be, but let me know in the comments if you would be interested in a Pride and Prejudice video, because I definitely would, and I even bought a bonnet. So this is an interesting one about French. This was around the time that I was struggling with hearing, right? And I was getting really stressed about my language results because I couldn't hear the listening things. And so I actually ended up going to a hospital to get my ears like thoroughly cleaned out and do hearing tests, basically. My dad had some hearing loss from a virus he had when he was younger. And so we just wanted to be sure that I wasn't, you know, having any hearing problems. And my hearing was perfect. The problem that I had was more of an auditory processing issue. The way that I process language is more visual. Reading is very much my strongest thing, and even when I'm listening, it's almost like I'm trying to process the words visually. When you have a language like French, where the sound doesn't match up with the letters all the time. So, for example, in German, it's like clear and precise. The letters, every syllable is pronounced. And when in French, when you have like, you know, words like grenouille, but yeah, so the auditory processing thing was made worse by the fact that French is arguably a harder language to kind of process auditorily. Oh, that's not a word. Or, you know, orally. orally. But also back then, we weren't even on CDs in the language department. We were on cassette tapes. And I don't know if you know anything about the quality of not just cassette recording, but also like the crap they gave us for the language stuff. It's really, really hard to hear. So I was struggling from that perspective because there was a lot of background noise, and that's something that I still do struggle with. So again, this is more in my GCSE year when I was 16. She conducts herself in a serious and unfussy manner. I am anything but serious. Like, in all points of my life, I have always had a kind of like whimsical nature and trying not to take things too seriously, even serious things actually. But that's who I felt I needed to be, is very serious, unfussy. That's an interesting word to describe me, isn't it? I could have had much better feedback on like where I would be headed and, you know, what strengths I do have, rather than just focusing on this really bland academic kind of stuff. Right, this is an interesting one because this is speech and drama. This is something that I chose to do because when I was a teenager, what I really wanted to be was an actress. Despite the fact that I was actually too self-conscious to get up on stage and act. This is a comment from my speech and drama teacher saying, she's begun to display more emotional involvement in her acting. And I thought that that was quite a funny kind of like autistic thing about being robotic sometimes. I've worked on creating tension within a scene. Or have I? So another comment from my drama teacher, she has developed some variety in vocal expression. She must now strive to relax. We all strive for that, thank you. So the summative report, I was 17, making sound progress, conscientious worker, same old. Her teachers all mentioned the need for wider reading and she should heed this advice so she can perform to an even higher standard. She enjoys her extracurricular activities and manages her time well so she can cope with the demands of gym, dance, the play, and young enterprise. She is to be congratulated on the great achievement of being made school ICT officer. I'm amazed that everybody's just like, she's coping so well, she's doing amazing. I'm just like silently super depressed in my room. So now in maths, they talk about checking my work carefully to avoid unnecessary mistakes. So listen to this in German. Her target for the future should be to improve on this already pleasing standard. It's like, nothing is good enough, you must improve everything. Of the way that I did work in all my subjects was that I wasn't necessarily working as hard as they thought I was. I was working in that kind of panicked ADHD way, which is very, very intense in short bursts because I couldn't manage my time. We've reached the final year of school where I'm preparing for my A-level exams and applying for universities. Physics, I make careless errors and doesn't always achieve my full potential. She's got great knowledge and ability, but if only she could fulfill her potential, then she would achieve all the marks that she's capable of. And it's this kind of stuff that it's like, I tried so hard and it just was never good enough because apparently I could be doing better. So this is the house mistress's final report. Samantha deserves great success in her final assessment, having maintained a high level of effort and achievement throughout the year. Despite feeling below par at times, she has always been self-motivated, developing mature and independent work habits. She has contributed greatly to the positive atmosphere, taking responsibility for herself and handling the increased freedom and autonomy with common sense and wisdom. Her delightful sense of fun and friendship have been invaluable, as have her thoughtful and sensitive dealings with those around her. She has given generously of her time and talents to the school, and we wish her joy and success for the future. I think that was the first time that joy was mentioned, and not in the context of a joy to teach. So clearly I was very well liked by teachers. They liked my maturity, my hard work, my general vibe. They didn't like how quiet I was, obviously, and they thought that I could be trying harder. And that's kind of the takeaway that I get. Those are the messages that I was sent over and over again. You need to talk more, you need to work harder, you need to be more organized. I mentioned there's really only one teacher who ever says, she's really anxious, and I was really anxious. I was so terrified. I couldn't speak in a lot of these cases. And, they're all saying, oh, she needs to speak more. Yeah, I would if it didn't send me into a great panic. Sometimes you'd get comments from teachers here and there about specific things, and you think, okay, well, maybe we should investigate that, since that's clearly something that she has problems with. Why is she not handing in her homework on time if she's so conscientious and hardworking? What's going on there? The main thing that I noticed reading it is how much pressure it put on me, so intense, and just she's doing really well, and I think that she could do even better. That's a way to kind of propel you forward in life through momentum, but it's really not a way to, develop good mental health, develop a good work-life balance, or even think that those things are important, because it was assumed, well, don't you want to be better? Don't you want to be even better? And then after that, you can be even better. And it just never stops. I think nobody really knew me that well at school. I didn't let people in. I certainly didn't let them into any of my weaknesses or insecurities, saying hey, I'm really struggling organizing myself, because I thought that the solution that they would give me would just be well, can you just do better? Can you just try harder? And I was really depressed and anxious, especially in my, I would say, final 3 years of school. And it just really makes me feel sad looking back. It makes me feel sad for myself. They had these high expectations of me that I was reaching and I was still failing. Feeling like I was failing at it. I still have a lot of feelings about this. And I think one of the best things I did for myself, without really realizing it at the time why, was I got out of that environment. I could very easily have given into this pressure, and for me the pressure would be apply to Oxbridge, or I think Harvard, because I was really obsessed with America at the time. I really wanted to go to Harvard. Clearly been watching Gilmore Girls, but I didn't apply. I think at the time I was just so afraid that I would fail at that, and I just couldn't deal with that. But also I had this sense that I wanted to get out of this very traditional hyper academic environment, and I wanted to explore myself and have a little bit more fun. And I think that ended up being a really good choice for me. I think had I gone to, well, it would have been Oxford for psychology. I think had I gone to Oxford, I would not have thrived. I think I would have crumbled. And that's not necessarily would have been a fault of mine, but definitely a way of the culture there, the academic culture of kind of pushing and pushing, a more intense version of my school. And I guess the takeaway that I want you to think about, if you have a child like I was, or if you are a teacher and you teach, kids who are like me, is that their academic output is no indicator of their mental health at the time, especially if they're a bit reserved and they're not really showing you how they're feeling, if they're shutting all of that out. You're focusing so much on their potential and their excellence and their output and what they can achieve, and actually nobody is focusing on how they're feeling, what brings them joy. It's something that I struggle with because I didn't grow up prioritizing it. Why would I think about what I like doing? And they may be very good at hiding what's going on underneath. If they're a masker, if they're autistic and they're really good at masking, they are probably really, really good at hiding when they're depressed or they're anxious. Don't cry, Sam. No, I'm getting emotional about it. It makes me feel sad. It makes me feel sad for my myself, my inner child and all that. I really want to know, how does this compare to your school reports? These are very intense reports. I don't know, it's not just like good progress, yeah, keep it up kind of thing. It's like really, there's some quite intense things in there. Did you have school reports like this? Were your reports this intense? Please let me know. I'm really curious to hear what kind of comments you had and what are the things that you were repeatedly told to work on. Don't forget to keep an eye out for my next video where I will be officially announcing my workbook that will be available at that point. And in the meantime, why not check out some older videos of mine? Take care of yourselves as always, and I'll see you next time. Bye. But enough wombles. She shows distinct musicality. Musicality? Macality? What's that name? From Girls. English, her coursework is the higher cuddler. Her through to her great flu. Great flu. And put a little happy smile on. She got off to a slow start. Do you want to pronounce all the letters? No, we don't. I'm running out of time. Yes, I am.